Today I'm here with Shaleen Wadhwana, the curator for the Fringe exhibition at the Vadera Art Gallery. First, to tell you a little bit about Shaleen. Shaleen is an independent arts educator and cultural heritage professional. Her curatorial practice explores meta-narratives in global history and artistic responses to contemporary social issues. And these thematic progressions are reflected in her current show, Fringe at the Vadera Art Gallery. Um, as a visiting faculty at MIT Institute of Design, Pune, she teaches big history and design futures and is the humanities curriculum designer for their innovation program. So can you tell us a bit about how you build relationships with these artists? Simply because, in a time of, in a cyber world which is, have screens as barriers, it must be difficult to um, get meaning across, especially right now since it's through a screen and we're also doing a Zoom call, ironically.
Very true. And I think that was one big important task as a curator because I'm the youngest entity in this ecosystem of this show of participating artists, the gallery, the gallerists, my team over here. So in that, I think one of the major things has been, for example, when it comes to Ruby's work, um, so she was comfortable with Zoom calls, but then not all artists are. So then I have to adapt and have like phone conversations with them. Not a lot of artists are on Instagram. So then I have to keep communicating about how we're speaking about the show on different fora back to them via email or via WhatsApp text. And in a normal time, of course, I may have visited studios of the artists that are within India, like Bangalore is where Renuka Rajiv and Abel Swami Unga reside, or Bombay with Atul and Anju, and those would have been very obvious possibilities, but that has not been the case. So a lot of it has to do with physically seeing the artwork when it arrives here and knowing and having a lot of trust that the conversation processes with the artists have resulted in at least a common fruition point of where you wanted to go in the curatorial direction. And as I already said, I had to expand the understanding of fringe from communities that are considered fringe by these artists, emotions, feelings, because there was an open-ended question, what or who constitutes fringe for you? And that answer changed so much in the last year. So my curatorial impetus also widened to expand and include that answer.
What steps can be taken to support artists and other stakeholders in the commercial world of art in this during the pandemic?
Over the last few months, I've seen so many different platforms come up, which try and increase the kind of opportunities that reach artists and creative professionals. So, for example, there's ArtChain India, there's KPA, there's Open Call India, and a lot of what these platforms do is create these, widen the bubbles of opportunities, widen the bubbles of news that reaches artists about different ways in which they can create. Now, when it comes to a certain kind of commercial support, a lot of the initiatives taken by a lot of the foundations and galleries over the last few months try and have some of those benefits, commercial benefits, reach NGOs and charities that were part of COVID relief, and that still are part of COVID relief. In addition to that, individual efforts, because I collaborated with Goonj and I bartered off my time in reviewing portfolios and CVs for artists and creative professionals in lieu of their donation to Goonj. So that is, an amount that we were able to raise as well. And there were such individual efforts as well. So there have been a range of these efforts over time. I think what needs to continue is creating more inclusive, more accessible worlds of art and knowledge, more inclusive and more accessible worlds of being able to study and learn about art and being able to create sustainable careers in it, especially at a time when everything is massively, massively compromised in terms of the global economy. So there is that. I mean, these are the efforts that have taken place. These are the efforts that are also continuing. And find which ones you can be part of, find which ones where you can ease for someone else the way in. Or having said that, also a lot of artists have put up their artworks for sale. These are not gallery represented artists with systems of support. These are independent artists that have put their artworks for sale. And though that the economics of that also try and help a lot of farmer protest relief funds at the moment.
So could you tell me a little bit more about the photographs of Sharbindu De's work? I see there are a lot of prints hanging on the walls, and a lot of them have just standalone figures or objects or monuments in them, and maybe a little bit about the significance.
Of course, of course. So here we're looking at um, the Lishu tribal community who've lived in Arunachal Pradesh for decades. And what you're seeing are glimpses of their life, their belief systems, their folklore, how they are as a community, courtesy a lot of work that Sharbindu has done as an academician, a lecturer, a photographer, documentarian with the Lishu community for the last 9 years. So a lot of what you see is through the consent that he's received in terms of being able to portray them the way they want to be portrayed. As a student of history myself, one of the most important parts is to look at how the colonial gaze has done a massive disservice to such tribal communities world over, be they in Africa, be they in Australia. And one of the major points, at least in this show, which deals with such a heavy loaded word like French, is to bring in narratives by people who are trying to subvert that subconscious imagery of, for example, in this case, tribes as backward, uncivilized, so on and so forth. In this, it's a lot more meditative, it's a lot more contemplative, and most importantly, it's a lot more with their consent of how they want to be seen and perceived. Of course, the responsibility lays on how much information and background we also provide for the viewers here. And in that, I'd also like to add that in 1983, the Indian government put in the Namdapha National Forest Act, which changed their status immediately to poachers and encroachers and made their living status illegal. That's also a very loaded topic with multiple types of protests that we've also had for a long, long time, but this kind of predates that as well. To me, it is very important to reconsider what we keep on constituting as French, to have conversation in spaces like the ones that I'm inhabiting right now, which is a space of huge privilege. The audiences here, the lives that they embody come from a certain kind of privilege where this conversation is also absolutely necessary and important. So this is one way to bring that conversation into that space, which most definitely needs to be thinking about it. Here, if you notice, there's a sound piece attached to this reflection of foliage on water. So this was shot during a middle of a Corona semi-lockdown in Rotterdam, where all the parks flourished so much that Jules Kreiser went and videoed this. And the sound piece is by Akikaza Nazamoru, who is a prolific musician and composer that created this sound piece to accompany this work. And in that reflection, I also add another reflection, which is the shadow of this branch-like coagulation on to her face. So there's that human and nature conundrum right here. To me, the bigger question again becomes, what is the kind of world that we're creating? Who is it being built for? Because the true encroacher is a big, big question we need to keep asking ourselves. Simply because we're at a point with our relationship with nature, with our relationship with climate, that we're at a point of no return when it comes to climate temperature, our global temperature. We're at a point of no return when it comes to slowly reaching a point of no return when it comes to carbon footprint. So we need to really examine what is it that we've done in our relationship with nature, because how the Lishus live is in absolute harmony with nature. So here, one of the bigger questions becomes, who is actually encroaching on whom, and whose life do we deem that we can't adopt, that's different from ours? So here, one of the bigger questions is that maybe a lot of the solutions in the ways to live are in the communities that we're totally confronting with these very unfair titles of encroachers and poachers, whereas we need to really re-examine how we are living with nature ourselves. And in that, you rightly asked, fringe was a fringe is a difficult word. I think that it's also a word that's very important to bring in spaces that are part of the invisible architecture that create the fringe, which is pretty much the space that I'm also standing in. To have a space to reflect and unpack this is very important. To have um, spaces that allow for these multiple interpretations to come in, have a conversation with each other and with us, and have us rethink that, if we're not any of the communities that are being impacted in any of the artworks, if we're not any of the communities, if we're not some of the communities that are being impacted in any of the artworks that are showcasing these realities about different communities, different emotions, then are we not part of the structure that creates the problem? So to be able to critique parts of the structure that we're part of is one of the bigger ways to learn to grow. And I understand that somewhere the show with so many different interpretations tries to do too much, touches too many different topics. But I stand by my curatorial vision in trying to create a space to have that conversation, especially in places where such conversations are least occurring.
How do you find your artists for the exhibitions? How do you find artworks to include in this exhibit?
I think one of the more important things to always remember is that the idea of civilization, the idea of the mainstream, and what keeps something on the fringe itself is something that needs to be re-examined all the time, especially which position you occupy or I occupy in it, which is why I wanted to split the word fringe into majority letters and minority letters, majority alphabets and minority alphabets of FRIN and then slash and then G, simply to also make the title of the show a bit of a question mark. In that, what happens with, and this depends from curator to curator, depending on, so some of them are gallery roster artists, and some of them are artists that I have met through different journeys, visiting different festivals, biennales, so on and so forth, or just stalking on Instagram also. So some of them are, for example, like Anna French have been to their works I've seen in different other spaces, festivals, online, and decided this is definitely someone that I'd like to work with at some point.
What does it mean to be a curator today, especially when you have to adapt to the challenges that come with this context of this pandemic context? How do you see the role of the curator evolving?
Very much, because I was also very aware that I'm not curating just for a physical audience, but I'm also curating for a digital audience. And to understand what goes into your 3D mapping is as important as trying to understand how the works respond to each other in a physical space, or at least it's become as important. Uh, I think that's tough. I think curators definitely always just have to adapt, and curating is not like a, you're also doing other things while you're curating, and you're teaching, you're designing curriculum, you're doing your lectures, your multiple other things that you're doing while you're also curating. So those energies always need to keep spilling in, and whatever you learn here needs to also just keep spilling out. And definitely the understanding of space has changed quite a bit, because how people will consume the space that you've curated in, that's changing.